study of the Christian mystics began primarily with St. Augustine, but I want to reach back today and pick up one who is outside of the immediate Christian tradition, but it was a part of my plan to do him, but 2 weeks ago it just didn't seem right. I want to deal with certain aspects of the mystical insight of Mahatma Gandhi. I have here something that is very precious to me, and this has nothing to do with Mr. Gandhi's mysticism, but I just want you to see it. This is a piece of cloth that Mr. Gandhi, that's made out of thread that Mr. Gandhi wove, and he gave it to me when we were in India in 1935, and I just thought you'd like to see it. You may recall that when we were talking about the Brahmanic mystics and Gautama Buddha, that considerable emphasis was placed upon the significance of the doctrine of ahimsa as it bore upon the relation between the inner life and the outer life. It was pointed out at the time that ahimsa deals basically with the attitude of the individual towards himself. It has to do with the purification of the individual's life. It is, in its outgoing manifestation, it is non-resistant, it is passive, it is non-active really, but not because of how the individual conceives of himself as being related to the other person, but rather because the attitude that is ahimsa, the quality of life that is ahimsa, is one which purifies the individual. I will, and the true doctrine, the true genius of ahimsa, I would say, I will not kill you because you are sacred or because you love your life, but it says that I will not kill you because if I kill you, I defame myself. Now, that's the essence of it, laid bare. The very anatomy of the doctrine of not killing, which is related, therefore, you see, to the whole mystical experience of purgation, of self-purification, as a part of the discipline through which the individual passes from his attachments in life and in experience, through detachment from life and experience, to illumination and then union. That's the process. Now we discovered how the Buddha gave a positive quality, a life-affirming quality to this this life-denying doctrine of ahimsa by injecting into the relationships a quality of compassion and a certain quality of reverence. He lifted the metaphysical doctrine of reverence for life to a category that was ethical in character, so that I revere life, and because I revere life, I will be compassionate to all living things. Now, that is the background of Mr. Gandhi. The story of his life is very well known to most of, well, to all of us, I suppose. I need not take time to go into details concerning it. There are two or three things, however, that I want to point out. I asked him, and you will pardon that part of it, but there's only one way to say that, and that's the way I'm saying it. I asked him, when at last we had a chance to see him, a chance that I thought we were going to miss, because each time a date was set for us to get together, he was sick. So 2 weeks before leaving India, in Bombay, we were. Early one morning, I decided that I would have to do something about it. You know, you wait for life to move, and then if life doesn't decide that it understands what you're talking about, then you try to give it some instructions. So I decided I would send him a telegram to find out whether we could go down to his place at Wada to see him or do something, because 2 weeks and we would be coming back to America, and you come back to America without having a chance to see him. So when I walked out of the house at which we were living, I met a man at the gate who had on a Gandhi cap and so forth. And he looked at me, and we passed each other, sort of spoke on the, well, I decided to speak, and he decided to speak, and then we both decided that we didn't know whether we should speak, and it was that sort of moment, you know, but we finally got by each other. And then he turned around, and he said, "Are you you?" And I said, "Yes." And then he said, "I have a letter from Gandhiji." And I said, "That's interesting, because I'm going to the post office now to send him a telegram." So I read the letter, and the letter said that he was down at a native state in Bardoli, and on his way back up to his ashram. He was not very well, traveling with his doctor, and he wondered whether we can interrupt our schedule at the university and come down to this place in Bardoli to see him. And then his letter said an amazing thing. I'll never get over it if I live forever. He said, "If your schedule is so busy and so crowded that you cannot take time to come down here to see me, and if at the end of your schedule you must get your boat so there is no time there to come to see me, I will get on the train with my doctor and come to Bombay to see you." Think of it, the great Mahatma Gandhi. I tell you, I'll never get over it. Well, of course, you can imagine what happened. We just canceled the rest of everything and went down there. 3 hours we sat talking by the watch, and he had the watch, a big silver watch that he put out in front. He said, we have only 3 hours, and there are many things that I want to know and we want to talk about, and we must do it by the clock, by the watch. At the end, I wanted to know one or two things, and Mrs. Thurman wanted to know one or two things, and he agreed to answer us because all the time we had spent answering his questions about America and about American Negroes and about Africans and so forth. I wanted to know from him, why did his doctrine of ahimsa, with the things that he added to it, non-cooperation and so forth, why did that fail of its objective, namely, to bring to the Indian people freedom? And he said to me that the doctrine failed because, number one, it was a creative, ethical doctrine with a spiritual foundation. Now follow his thinking now. With a spiritual foundation, and it would be effective only in the life that was so disciplined, that the life, could handle this ethical doctrine with its spiritual foundation. And he said, the masses of Indians can't do that. Because, said he, they are lacking in vitality. And they're lacking in vitality for two reasons. The first reason is they're hungry. And then he talked statistics about the number of Indians who live and die and so forth without getting enough food to eat, and on and on and on. And he said, so I had to withdraw from politics. I mean, from active politics and go into something else. I had to do something about this poverty. And during the long months, 6 months, during which the season is dry and farming is impossible, the villagers are idle and they starve. Now, if we could recapture the lost cottage industry by reintroducing the village and the cottage spinning wheel, then we could make a fundamental attack on this question of poverty. So the spinning wheel became the symbol, the vehicle, by which this man sought to attack the problem, not of poverty as such, but to make it possible for the average Indian to deal creatively with the doctrine of ahimsa. That's the thing to remember. Don't forget that. Incidentally, of course, it meant an attack on poverty and so forth. Then, the second reason for their lack of self-respect was the presence of untouchability in Hinduism. Untouchability in Hinduism. And I expected him to say that they had lost their self-respect because of the presence of the conqueror in their midst, that this man was there and been there for several, 200 or 300 years and had done this and this and this and this and this. No, he said none of that. But we have lost our self-respect because we practice, as Hindus, we practice untouchability. Tremendous. So he began working at it. And the first thing he did, as a caste Hindu, was to adopt into his family, as a member of his family, a girl who was an untouchable. And at the time he did that, the plight of the untouchable was so terrible in South India that an untouchable was not even permitted to cross a street on which was located a Hindu temple. because his shadow would contaminate. At that moment, this man adopted as a member of his family one of these people. And he said to all the caste Hindus, this is what I mean by what I'm saying. And then the second thing he did was to change the name from untouchables or Sudras or Paris, depending on the part of the country, to Harijans. And the word Harijans means child of God. And he said, with a wonderful cherubic chuckle, he said, I felt that if I could make every caste Hindu call an outcast every time he referred to him, a child of God, I would, in that act, create for the caste Hindu the kind of moral problem that could never be solved until he changed his attitude towards the untouchable. Tremendous, isn't it? Let that soak in. It's tremendous. So his magazine is changed the name of his publication to Harijan. Now what's back of all this? Here is a man, and this is how it relates to our series. Here is a man who who's rooted in the basic mysticism of the Brahma. Who inherits as one of the ethical overtones of his Hindu past the application of the doctrine of ahimsa to individuals and to relationships with individuals that extend beyond that of merely self-purification. Which says, you see, that it is possible to achieve effective worldly ends, mark all the words, please, that it is possible to achieve effective worldly ends by the use of methods, techniques that are themselves unworldly. Now think about it. Well, let's don't hurry over that, even though the time is getting away. Let's think about it. That it is possible to achieve worldly ends, the thisness and thatness ends, proing and conning ends, conflicts, the contradictions of experience, all of the tensions by which the individual's life is twisted because the good that he sees he is unable to achieve, and the good that he sees again and again he does not want to achieve. That it is possible to deal with the materials that are inherent in the traffic of life, to deal with them effectively and creatively by the use of means and methods that are themselves derived from another kind of orientation. Now, that's what he's saying. So, Ahimsa then becomes a doctrine of ethics which is life-affirming, even though ingenious, the doctrine is life-denying. For it says, you see, as Gandhi very adequately expressed in Manifest, that whatever may be the nature of the time-space involvements of the human spirit, they are always rooted in a dimension of life that transcends time and space. That there is no such thing as an activity that is not rooted and grounded in a realm that transcends that activity. That's what he's saying. And if it be true then that there is a quality that is spiritual that undergirds the total operation of life's adventure, then he who is able to deal with the things on the surface of life from within the knowledge that he has of the depths of life will be able to gather in the total sweep of his living a creative synthesis in which there is at last no conflict and no frustration. Now that's what he's saying. You believe that? You believe that? I wonder. We believe it in little ways, don't we? We believe it in little ways. You have a problem in your own life, and it merely has to do with your digestion. You know, just for some reason it isn't operating properly. And you think about various things. You say, well, something disagreed with me, or I should have known better than to have eaten the cucumbers at 12 o'clock at night, or something like that. But when if it keeps happening, you keep fooling with it. You begin to dig back behind that, don't you? And maybe I'm worrying too much. Maybe I'm getting too tired. And you go on, and little by little, you push back until at last that which is movement on the surface of your life is but manifestation of stirrings at the depth of your life. That's what he's talking about. Now let's see the kind of thing that it made him do, and I'll be through in 2 or 3 minutes, I hope. When one of his ascetic friends chided him because he was becoming involved more and more in thisness and thatness, more involved in conflict and life, instead of withdrawing into the foothills or some other place in the Himalayas and there practicing his purgation. There's something to be said for that. We've talked about it once before. This deep insistence that keeps turning up in the human spirit that somehow I must, at long last, withdraw. And in my withdrawing, I am able to bring to bear upon the total problems of existence a total self that isn't scattered in this and that and the other. And perhaps if I can do that, and men always rise up in our society who feel this way and who are under great conviction and who have a tremendous contribution to make to our disorder. If they can sufficiently purgate themselves, then, and at last get the illumination, and be bathed in the light of his presence, so that there is no longer any awareness of darkness. And I do not know which is I and which is he. There are men who feel that if that can happen, then the world can be redeemed. And only that way. So, when such a man wrote to Mahatma Gandhi, chiding him because he was trying to clean up the world, clean up India, and doing a lot of other things, why don't you withdraw to your cell? And Gandhi said, I carry my cell with me. Working in human relations and politics, trying to clean up life around me. That is my purgation. That is my hair shirt. That is my discipline. I do not offer it for you, he said, but for me. Working in the traffic is the discipline. And if I, in the midst of the traffic of life, can walk with the independence of solitude, as Emerson says, then every struggling man caught by the agonizing pressures of his life from which there seems to be no relief can take hope. Because where he is in his trap, surrounded by the intimacy of his own agonies, there he can see God's face and be transformed. And that's why the masses of the Indian people found in this strange little man the door to all their hopes.
And it's easier to believe, both in the love and the wisdom of God, because he left so great a witness in so humble a man.